key thing that people and we need to know about the heart is how blood moves through it and how the contraction of the heart is actually regulated. So in this short video, I'm going to go and summarise lots of the key parts. So to start off with, we have the blood entering the heart through the superior and inferior vena cava, right? It's entering from the body. Because it's entering from the body, it's going to be deoxygenated. The next thing to be aware of is that a nerve impulse is travelling from the brain through pacemaker cells down to the sinoatrial node, right? So it travels all the way down to the sinoatrial node, right? This electrical excitation begins your heart contraction and starts off the heart beating in a particular way. So, that impulse from the sinoatrial node causes the contraction of the right hand side or the right hand atrium, right? So as that electrical impulse travels around it, that causes it to contract. Because it's contracting, the pressure in the atrium increases. Remember that it's always important that when we're talking about the heart in general, we go and we discuss pressure. That will go in turn and cause an atrial ventricular valve to be forced open. So because that valve is being forced open, the blood is going to go and travel down into the right hand ventricle. So the blood travels down through there into the right hand ventricle. It's important to remember the entire atrium empties at this point. The valve that is shutting, its proper name is the tricuspid valve. Right, so the tricuspid valve, once it goes through, is open. Once that ventricle starts to contract, that tricuspid valve is forced shut. That is there to stop any backflow from taking place. So, in terms of how this is controlled by the nervous system, the impulse is travelling from that sinoatrial node to an atrioventricular node that sits at the top of the septum. So it sits kind of there. That nerve impulse travels down a bundle of nerve fibres that runs through the centre of the septum called the bundle of His. And it goes and it gets carried all the way down to the bottom of the heart, right? So the bottom of the heart is called the septum. So the nerve impulses then, once they reach that bottom part, go and travel around nerve fibres from the bottom all the way up to the top, called Purkinje fibres. So this is going to cause the bottom of the ventricle to contract before the top, so therefore all of the blood in that ventricle goes and gets forced out. You could almost think of it as like squeezing stuff out of a tube of toothpaste. So the right hand ventricle goes and contracts, therefore the pressure in it is increased. Right? As that pressure increases, we go and cause that tricuspid valve to go and shut and a semiluminal valve to open up. So the deoxygenated blood now goes and passes through that semiluminal valve and into the pulmonary artery. Right? It's worth remembering that the pulmonary artery is the only artery in the body that is carrying deoxygenated blood. So, the pulmonary artery, or the blood is kept in the pulmonary artery because that valve there is closed, therefore preventing any backflow. So, the pulmonary artery goes and it takes the blood up to the lungs, right where the hemoglobin in the blood will go and pick up any oxygen due to the high affinity of hemoglobin to oxygen. Right, then the blood goes and re-enters the heart through the pulmonary veins. Right, this is the only vein in the body that is carrying oxygenated blood. So it's going and it's entering the left-hand atrium through that vein. It's worth remembering as well, while that's happening, blood is also entering the other side of the heart through the superior and inferior vena cava. The next thing is that you're going to have a nerve impulse then from the sinoatrial node, therefore causing that left-hand atrium to go and contract, therefore increasing the pressure in it. Because that pressure is increased, that semilunar valve is forced shut, and that atrioventricular valve, called the bicuspid valve, leading between that atrium and that ventricle, is forced open. So the blood flows from an area of high pressure to an area of lower pressure. So that is going to go and cause the left-hand atrium to empty and all the blood to pass into the left-hand ventricle. While this is happening, the nerve impulse is going and travelling down from that sinoatrial node all the way down to that atrioventricular node, which in turn goes and passes that nerve impulse down the bundle of His through the septum until it goes and reaches the bottom where the Purkinje fibres are. This nerve impulse goes and travels around the Purkinje fibres, causing the bottom to contract before the top, forcing the blood up that way. So at that point, the mitral valve, preventing backflow of oxygenated blood from going back into the atrium, gets shut. The left-hand ventricle contracts, right, due to the fact that we've got this nervous impulse travelling around these Purkinje fibres. So the oxygenated blood goes and is forced up through that way, up into the aorta, where your aortic valve opens up, and finally the blood goes and passes to the body through the aorta. About a third of it goes straight to the brain, 2/3 of it goes to the body, half of it to the left-hand side of the body, half of it to the right-hand side. So that is just a bit of a brief summary about how nervous impulses and contractions and such forth move blood around the heart.